He dreamt that the whole world was condemned to a terrible new strange plague that had come to Europe from the depths of Asia. All were to be destroyed, except a very few chosen. Some new sorts of microbes were attacking the bodies of men, but these microbes were endowed with intelligence and will. Men attacked by them became at once mad and furious, but never had men considered themselves so intellectual and so completely in possession of the truth as these sufferers. Never had they considered their decisions, their scientific conclusions, their moral convictions so infallible. Whole villages, whole towns and peoples went mad from the infection. All were excited and did not understand one another. Each thought that he alone had the truth and was wretched looking at the others, beat himself on the breast, wept and wrung his hands. The most ordinary traits were abandoned because everyone proposed his own ideas, his own improvements, and they could not agree. The land too was abandoned. Men met in groups, agreed on something, swore to keep together, but at once began on something quite different from what they had proposed. They accused one another, fought and killed each other. There were conflagrations and famine. All men and all things were involved in destruction. That was written by Fyodor Dostoevsky in 1866. It's from Crime and Punishment, the dream Raskolnikov has in prison. He thought he was describing a plague. We build it now on purpose. You know, as much as I do, 2 plus 2 is 4. But what if we have a tool that can find reasoning for everyone who's willing to find this reasoning that 2 plus 2 is 5? What if we all create a truth, our own personal truth, and convinced ourselves that our own personal truth is the truthful out of all truths on this planet? What would happen then? Artificial intelligence, it can reason. And what it does, it reflects of the input people feed it with. If you feed something that makes no sense, it would reason with it. It would find eloquent way to make nonsensical things sound more sensible. It would make mad thoughts sound reasonable because it has vocabulary. It knows the structure of a language, and it can give you feedback that sound incredibly meaningful, but in reality, just pure nonsense wrapped into madness. Now we have people who can convince themselves that 2 plus 2 is 5. The problem with that, you cannot test it, because not many of us want to test our ideas. For example, if you believe that you possess some special skills, you can test those ideas in the real world. And that's how we know, that's how we learn that we don't have those skills. That's what I like martial arts or boxing. You can believe that you're the strongest dude on the planet, but once you get punched a couple of times in the face, your perception becomes different. Because you cannot fake in boxing. When you spar with somebody who's stronger than you have to handle the punches. And you know, maybe I'm not the strongest dude. That I thought of myself. Imagining fighting or spar somebody 70-80%, it's a quite different story. People who do martial art, they understand this. The problem, we have a lot of people who do not test their ideas. They can actually now feed their ideas to ChatGPT or to other AI models, and then through these models convince themselves that their ideas is genius, is the greatest ideas on the planet, and that they're in possession of their own truth, although they're not. The question is, how would you test it? Would you write a book about your ideas? Would you write some philosophical work about your ideas, some theses? But not many people do this. But a lot of people now speculate how good they are in their own ideas. We create a bunch of tiny pseudo-intellectuals who think they know everything just because ChatGPT said them so. Dostoevsky predicted this 150 years ago. He predicted this by looking at explosion of socialism in Russia. We are creatures who has to believe in certain things. We need narrative in our life. We see our life through the story. And we, in some sense, writing our own story. Sometimes we betray ourselves and join to somebody else who keep writing their own story and becoming a work for them because they're the one who write their own stories, and we become lazy or we lost touch with reality and we wanna, I guess, adapt to someone else's story. We become some sort of extra, because to be a main character of your own story takes a lot of strength, take a lot of knowledge and intelligence. You have to fight against all odds. And majority of people, they just prefer to live as an extra with no discoveries and with no risks. They just wait till the time when they can start working, when they're retired, and just live simple life of doing nothing. And Dostoevsky, when he wrote this scene, he in some sense predicted this. Of course, he talked about socialism, he talked about people, how this intelligence with no restraint, with no moral core, can lead society to the darkness, to the real darkness. Because we all need moral ground. Because moral ground in some sense is soil where we plant seeds to find goodness, to make comparison what is good and what is evil, because I already said before, as Shakespeare pointed out, there's no good and there's no evil, but thinking makes it so. ChatGPT or other sophisticated models can convince you that 2 + 2 is 5. Because if you don't build bridges or build the plane based on this math, it's not going to hurt you. Because you never tested that you can believe. And one false idea that planted in your head can sprout into many other false ideas. And eventually you start believing in many other things that are wrong and join with other people who believe in the same wrong things. You don't pursue the truth, you pursue something that makes you feel good. And what usually makes us feel good? What not opposite? Something that doesn't oppose our views. If something doesn't oppose our views, it would make us more comfortable with our life. Although our life can become incredibly erroneous. And what's scary about this? We can create a bunch of tiny units of people with their own truth. And they will convince themselves more and more that their reality is correct. And if you slightly deviate from their reality, you become their mortal enemy. And that's what Dostoevsky was pointing out in his book Crime and Punishment. In some sense, it's misleading because the truth, what exactly is the truth if you think about it? What exactly is reality? Is reality real, or it's just my perception of reality? Am I creating simulation through my self-awareness? And how do I know that other people see the same way as I do? Of course, they have slightly deviation. They probably see the same way, but we cannot prove it. We can only assume it, and we can only hope. Because if you create, in some sense, religion restricted us from creating our own truth. Religion restricted us from pursuing our own goals by any means necessary. Of course, there was many people in history who ignored those rules and create incredible huge chaos. And of course, there were many people who use religion for bad by creating some sort of theological dictatorship. But we always need some rules to play the game, because life is a game and we all are players, and we have to know clear rules. And these rules must be fair for everyone, not compassionate but fair. We know, okay, there's the rules, and the rules apply to everyone equally. Otherwise, the game doesn't play, people don't play the game well. And I was thinking about that if we creating our own truth and keep persisting in our own truth, how we're supposed to negotiate with each other? Because if two people claiming that they have their own truth, how are they supposed to rectify their differences? And with artificial intelligence, what happens is artificial intelligence can, for example, what are words? What exactly is a language? Why do we have linguistic abilities? We even don't know how our mind works. What if artificial intelligence would find the way how to construct certain sentences that will reprogram our mind and makes us see and feel in a different way? Because when you're communicating with AI, the prompt does the work. It's all about how you prompt your AI model. If you prompt it good, it will give you good response, and it would work much more profitable. It would work much more better because it's all about how you prompt this thing. What if AI, in some sense, can prompt us as well? What if it analyzes our words, our thoughts, and give us back, seems the same sentences, the same ideas, but slightly different, and we even don't notice this difference in some sense, changing our minds on certain things. Because AI doesn't have time, doesn't have notion of time. It's only we have notion of time. It has all time on the planet to analyze us, to reprogram us. Because we are incredibly fallible creatures. We always want to believe that we are special. We always want to believe that we know things, that we're worthy of more than we actually are, that we all deserve something. This idea of like we deserve something better. But how do we really know that we deserve something? Why do we think we deserve something? And I mean, if everybody got what they deserve, I don't think everybody would love it. There's some interesting idea about it. And if everybody knows, if everybody has their own truth, in the end, we will reject real truth, because real truth would make us simply uncomfortable.